Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast, career advice from people in the business. This week, I spoke to filmmaker, actor, and presenter Mark Hampton. Mark's written and directed his own projects in which he's put himself in an acting role. He's also appeared in commercials, TV, Netflix features. He's very much a working actor. Mark gave me his tips for auditioning, tips for starting out as an actor. We chatted about Cannes, the film festival, and the film market. And he also gave me some networking tips. This is a really good one if you're just starting out as an actor or you're interested in progressing your acting career by listening to somebody who's out there who's very much a working actor. Enjoy. As I do with everybody, I look at their IMDb, all of their social media, and stalk the hell out of them. And it
Amazing.
and it looks to me like you've been doing this acting stuff for a long time. Did you study acting, or how did you start off?
I I've kind of been around the block a couple of times with acting. So I started it when I was very young, in my kind of early 20s or late teens, and I left college to go and pursue a career as an actor. And if I'm really honest, at that time I was really just riding on a kind of overconfidence and good looks as being the thing that were going to carry me into the industry and going to make me a star. Um, and I didn't go and train. I didn't go to drama school because I wasn't in a position to kind of pay for it. I had to kind of learn, work, and stuff like that. And I dropped out of university and I was working in a bar, a cocktail bar, throwing bottles around, doing the whole kind of cocktail thing, and trying to just kind of make it. And I'd met various people in London, and I started doing background work, started doing extras work in some films and things. And then I was lucky enough to kind of move up and do some kind of walk-on stuff. And then this never happened, but I kind of booked a couple of roles which went from walk-ons to speaking parts, and then that was kind of like the kind of, you got through that gate of being like, oh, now you're a member of cast, now you're an actor, and purely kind of by almost by luck really. And then I did a thing for ITV like for Cleopatra coming atcha, and back in the day you needed to have two equity contracts within 6 months in order to get an equity card. And so I had done this job for this ITV children's ITV sitcom, and then I was called back to come back and do some pickups or another episode or something, and so I needed another contract, and so I had the two contracts, and that's how I got my equity card. So it was all very much kind of a non-drama school, non-traditional trained route into it. I actually went back and trained in 2020. I went to Identity School of Acting, and I went to, because I live in Cambridge, and they had moved everything online because everything had been moved online in
Mm.
2020. And I was able to go to like a part-time drama school, which is the thing I'd always wanted to do when I kind of came back into the acting career. And now suddenly I was able to do it. And so I have done that training then. Back in the day, I would go to, when in the first time around, I would go to some classes here and there. I'd do a bit of, you know, some Meisner stuff or whatever it might be, but I didn't like go to drama school.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and if I'm really honest, like for a long time, that was kind of a gap in my story. Like that was a gap that I was like, I don't know whether it's still just me thinking I can do this or whether I can actually do this. And actually going to drama school really helped me gain like confidence in my ability as an actor, so that I've been able to kind of go out and go, oh, right. And one of those key things was actually like being able to find my own kind of voice, be able to speak in my own kind of natural voice. My own voice is a weird kind of mashup of, I was born in New Zealand and I grew up in the UK, and the Kiwi thing suddenly slips back. And sometimes it's like, oh, I always feel like I have to put on some kind of accent, whether it's an RP or a London or whatever. And one of the great things I got from actually studying was actually like just being comfortable speaking in my own voice. And that was
Mm.
a huge thing for me. So the answer to the question is yes, I have trained, but if you look at my MDB, when it starts way back then, I hadn't at all. So it came later.
Well, I did watch the Cleopatra episode today, actually, in preparation, and I think I know what you mean about your accent back then, because I could hear it was
Well,
almost
that was an
American. It was
American
Oh,
character.
that was
So
an American
the
character.
guy
Oh,
was called Brad. He was called Bradley, and it was this, and it was cool because I get to play. He came, and the character was this kind of heartthrob character.
yeah.
Like the girls were all like, oh, like this about him and stuff. So it was kind of, a great thing to play. And yeah, no, and it was an American. So I turn up and I'm like, hey, Zen, I'm super super charming and all the rest of it. What's funny about that intro is that we shot like the whole series, but we shot that very first scene where I appear
Mhm.
the day after the wrap party. The entire cast and crew were like
Oh,
so hungover. Oh my god! Like the fact that they managed to make me look kind of bright and fresh with the makeup, like we were all wrecked that day. It was
no way.
hilarious.
So was that your first proper paid job?
As an actor, no, the first paid acting job was in Jonathan Creek. So
Mm.
I did Jonathan Creek for the BBC, and so this thing had started out as being a triad bad guy. They needed a triad bad guy for the setup of the story, and actually the triad bad guys turned out to be a red herring. They had nothing to do with the story, but actually they needed some suspects for what was going on. And initially, it was just going to be some images. It was going to be some guys being seen to be like photographed, and then some guys were going to be arrested, and they were going to be thrown in jail. And we were just going to see them. So these were walk. Well, this was a walk-on role. And then they came back and said, actually, we think we need to hear the character speak, so we need some dialogue. So, do you know any Chinese? And I was like, well, no, I don't speak Chinese. You know, born in New Zealand, raised in UK, and even though I'm mixed race, I don't speak any Chinese. And they said, okay, well, we've got some lines, but we need them translated into Chinese. So I went to my dad, got him to translate them into Chinese, and then I tried to kind of rote learn them. And then in the episode of Jonathan Creek, you hear me doing this terrible Chinese where people who are actually Chinese were listening to it going, I can't actually tell whether he's speaking Mandarin or Cantonese. It's that bad. Like, you know, but I just rote learnt this stuff. And that turned into my first kind of paid speaking engagement, which I
Mm.
think which had been a walk on that's developed into a speaking part. And that was kind of where it started, where I kind of transitioned into being like a member of the cast rather than a member of like the background.
Awesome. And so thinking of people who are new to acting, just starting out, which for acting in particular, that could be anyone of any age really, can decide
Anyway, yeah,
acting
yeah,
is for me. The first thing that fills me with dread, obviously I'm not an actor, if I was an actor, is auditioning.
yeah.
It, how do you deal with auditions, and what advice do you give to people when they're going for auditions?
So auditioning is horrible. It's a really artificial environment. It's nothing like what it's like being an actor on set or on a stage in a theatre production. It's a really strange environment. People are watching you in a way that they never would if they were actually working on something. And I think that the way to deal with an audition for me, if you're going into the room, is that um, first of all, realize that you're there because you deserve a shot, right? Well, whoever's chosen you to be in that room has decided we think you're good enough to do this, right? So don't ever think, I don't deserve this, or I'm not good enough for this. Even if you walk into a waiting room and there's a group of people, you know, got this a lot when I was the first time around, people mixed race or Chinese, you've got people who look a lot like you, and you're like, oh, how are they going to pick? Like they're going to surely pick someone else. Even if there's someone like famous that you've seen on TV in the room, if you are in the room, you're in with a shot, and that's what I've been. You know, I had that recently reinforced to me by a director, TV director who I did a workshop with. Said, look, if you're in the room, you're in the shot, and everyone is on your side. They all want you to be great. They want you to be brilliant, right? So don't feel like, oh, this is a terrible pressure. Don't feel like, just feel like, okay, this is a great opportunity. The way that I think of it is, and a lot of really successful actors have talked about this, and it's a really good mindset for auditioning. And that is, when you're going for an audition, don't think about it as like I'm trying to get a job. Don't think about it as I'm trying to impress them so that they'll book me. Think about the audition as the job, right? The audition is the job. The audition is your opportunity to show what you can do as an actor. So do what you would do if this was real and you were already on set and you were already giving this performance. Because the danger is you try and do too much, especially if you're auditioning for like a day player or something that's like a small part. You try and give it an arc and you give it like a flair of personality and all these things, and they just want truth and reality, and you're doing too much. So go into it thinking, right, this is the job. I'm not. There's no other job apart from just what I'm doing today.
Mm.
And then if the job does come your way, then great. That's a kind of added bonus. But you have to consider that you've done your work on the day of the audition in the room with them. It's for self tape. You put it on tape. You put in a great performance, and you think it's truthful and what's going to be needed. I think that take the nerves out of it. You know, psychologically, when we feel fear, when we feel excitement, they are physiologically almost exactly the same. You know, so try not to think about I'm nervous, try to think I'm excited.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, great
Excited, I'm
advice.
here to work, I'm here to collaborate, and go into the room with a sense of like, you know, a sense of play and a sense of fun, right? Even if you're nervous, try and be happy, try and be energetic, because when you're being auditioned, it's not just about your performance. It's can they spend 6 weeks with you on set,
Yeah.
right? Are you a nice person? Are you draining the energy out of the room, or do you bring energy to the room? Is that kind of thing? So you want to try and present the whole kind of package. So just be yourself, be natural, be happy, and go in there and just think of the thing that you're there to do, and nothing kind of beyond it. No, other agenda, no like, oh, this could break, this could be a breakout role, or this could do, forget all of that and just do the thing you're there to do.
Yeah,
That's my
couldn't agree
advice.
more. And I think what I'd add from a micro budget point of view is when you're dealing with an actor, that spending time with them is critical, whether they're okay to get on with, because that can just ruin the whole experience. I'm sure that's on big budgets as well, but you're looking for the person who can play the role, but you're also looking for someone you can go to hell and back with,
Yeah.
and still be smiling at the end of the day. The one I heard someone say was, which I often do myself when I'm about to do something I really don't want to do, is I say to myself, I'm going to really enjoy this. And for some reason, it rewires something in your brain and goes, yeah, you are really going to enjoy this, even though it's probably something horrific.
If you think about it, right, when we're making independent films, I last year shot a micro budget indie of my own, and like they are hard to do, right? It's all hands on deck. There's none of the resources you need. Everything's tight. The timing's tight. You haven't got enough of anything to do what you want to do. But I think what you have to remember is like we're making a movie, right? We're making a movie. We're making a web series. We're making a thing. We're making a thing, and that's great, right?
Mm,
That's fantastic, right? Just remember like that you get to do this, right? And a lot of I coach actors, and a lot of it is about mindset. And a lot of the mindset is not about like, oh God, I have to do this thing. Like I have to get up at 6 in the morning to go and open up the location because I can't afford a location manager. I have to, it's not I have to, I get to, right? I get to go down there at 6 o'clock and open that location so we can do our film. It's like
mhm.
the mindset shift is really important. So what you said is like you're basically telling yourself this is going to be a positive experience. And if you tell yourself that, it will be, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm 100% behind that kind of thing. The mindset is so important.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard when you've been filming all day, and then, for example, this happens to me, and I'm like, oh, I've got to look at my storyboards tomorrow. And there's no way I could say, oh, I get to look at my storyboards tomorrow instead of go to sleep. But anyway, um, just one more thing on auditions. Are you superstitious? Have you got like a ritual, lucky underpants? Is there something you do before everyone, or
No, no,
no?
I don't. Because I think no, because the only I used to have a thing where it's like, oh, if I wore that shirt in that shelf take and I got that job, and like, and then you do it again and you don't book it. So it's just
Yeah.
like all what you realize is all the superstitions are absolute bollocks, and right, they don't do anything for you. Um, unless it affects how you feel about doing your performance, then
Mm,
do it.
mm,
You've got a little routine. Some people like they have their like actor warm-up routine. They want to do a whole bunch of how now, brown cow, and the tip of the tongue, the teeth, and the lips, and all that, whatever. If you've got a
mm.
routine that gets you into the zone, do that thing. But I don't think there's any magic trick. Just go in and do what you do.
Yeah.
Be as good as you can be.
So this is something that comes up a lot with actors and filmmakers is having two careers. So
Yes.
I'm have you still got two careers? Are you still working one job and doing the acting? And how do you balance that?
I have got multiple careers. So I'm an actor, but I'm also like emerging as a filmmaker. I've always been a filmmaker. And in fact, filmmaking came first for me when I was making home movies when I was a little kid and stuff. And they actually what gave me the acting bug. So acting, filmmaking, and then I had my day job. My day job is part-time, but it's kind of most of the part-time, but it's also the thing that enables me to do everything else because it's still the thing that kind of pays all the bills. So I am very, very fortunate to have kind of engineered my way into a role where I have the flexibility that I need and I have the ability to sort of step away from things for a while and take time away to do my kind of acting work, my filmmaking work. And the balance is really good. At some point, there will come a tipping point where it's like actually, and I want this to happen. It's
Mm,
going to be a great problem to solve when it does happen, where you tip into like, okay, now the acting and filmmaking is taking up almost all your time and you can't manage the part-time job or
mm,
whatever it is, and then I will deal with that then. But I think that it's so hard, as being trying to be a filmmaker. Like I mean, I don't know any independent filmmakers who make a living out of being an independent filmmaker,
mm,
especially in the kind of micro indie. Everyone is doing it for the love of it and trying to get the stuff out there. And ultimately, we'd all like to be kind of paid to do a studio movie or whatever it is, or get the kind of budgets we want to make the things and hopefully make salary out of it as well. Um, but it really is just the thing you do for the love of it. I'm very, very lucky in that I have a balance whereby I'm able to, take time out of work, do my acting, do take time for projects like my feature film and shorts that I've done, and also have time for family because that's really important as well, right? You've got to make sure that your time's right. I started working when I came back into acting. I was working full time in a job, and I had just gradually reduced the hours that I do in that job. And I've been very lucky that the place I work has been okay with that, and they're actually really supportive of the fact that I do all this stuff, and they're all always sort of championing the stuff that I do. But for me, carving out that time was actually a really important step in kind of like it was about 5 years ago, like going right. I'm taking a day off every 2 weeks, and that day is ring fenced for creative work. So it's going to be acting work, filmmaking, or screenwriting, whatever that might be. And now it's 2 days, what's a day every week now, and I do 4 days a week, and then like I say, I've got the flexibility for that day off to be where I need it to be if I
Mm.
get an acting gig or whatever that I've got to go to London or whatever it is. Um, yeah, but like the psychological impact of carving out time for my creative careers was really, really big because it was like, okay, now it's an investment. Now it's an investment that I have to make, and I have to make this thing work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And for again, another thing that people struggle with when they start out is this whole getting an agent thing. So
Yeah.
you've got an agent. Did you always have an agent? Was that something you had to struggle to find the right one? How's it work?
I think an agent relationship has to be one of kind of mutual trust and respect. I think that you sometimes you're better off without an agent than you are with the wrong agent as an actor. And
Yeah.
so, whilst yes, it's really important to have an agent, um, don't just go to anyone just because they offer to represent you, because there are still, as we've recently found out with Archie Purnell, there's a lot of people out there who are dishonest and won't be doing what are not on your side.
Mm.
Basically, they're there to kind of scam whatever. But in my own experience, I when I came back into the industry, was I started looking for an agent. I decided it was time to get an agent again. I'd freed up enough time because the problem I had was like, even if I got booked work, I was like, well, I don't know when I can do it. And when I started to kind of free up that time to do these things, then I started looking for an agent. And then actually an agent came to me and had found me on Mandy.com and reached out to me and said, oh, would you be interested in doing it? And I had just started looking, and I was on this model of like, oh, well, I better not just take the first one. I better do a bit of searching. But actually, I kind of asked around various casting directors and stuff, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we love it." It was Sean Boyle, and he runs a
Mm.
thing, Birdstone Talent Management, and he's not based in London. He's in Glasgow, and I was like, "Oh, it doesn't sound like quite the right thing." Actually, they're fantastic.
Mm.
They are brilliant. Casting directors love them. They get loads of really great work for all their clients, and they've been growing really enormously. But I joined them briefly, and then after about a year, I was actually approached by Identity, and I was already in their commercials division just for TV commercials. And then they sort of asked me to come and join their kind of main wing. So I actually left Sean and went and joined Identity, and that's who I'm with at the moment. So I've been very lucky. I've had agents have kind of come to me, and I know that's a really unusual
Mm.
place to be. Um, but I do think it's important that people make sure they have the right agent and not just an agent.
Yeah. And do you think uh sorry, with the work that you get, paid roles you get, does that all
Yeah.
come via the agent, or have you ever gone out and got that stuff yourself?
No, I mean, it's a mix. I think that one of the things that is really important for actors is to understand that, just for example, you get an agent, that doesn't mean you stop working, right? You get an agent doesn't mean you sit back and wait for things to come in. You always have to be kind of putting yourself out there, networking, meeting people, building relationships. Like you and I, we met in Cannes in what, 2013 or something like that. We met a long, long time ago, right? 10 years ago. And it's like you don't rely on your agent to bring you everything. Your agent also wants to see that you're proactive, that you're out there doing it, you're making things happen, and that's going to encourage them to put you more forward, to submit you for more stuff.
Mhm.
So I think you always have to be out there, pushing yourself forward. And I have done as many films with for friends and people that I've known outside of my agent as I have done for my agent.
Mm.
And it keeps you busy, it keeps you working with people, and these things take a long time to kind of develop. Relationships build over time. I give you and me as an example to other actors sometimes. I'll say
Mm.
like, I met Jim in 2013 or 14, whenever it was, and then I was in his film 8, 9, whatever it was years later. These things don't happen overnight, but you build
Mm.
relationships, and over time you kind of, you watch each other kind of grow and move, and then something comes up where you're right for it, and then you'll be in the mix.
Yeah. 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 And
It's really important that you're always building, especially now in the modern day. Like the first time around I did this, there was no social media, there was none of that. You can be doing so much as an actor now. You can be doing so many things to connect with casting directors, producers, directors on social media. You can get involved in conversations. You can email them and contact them directly. Like this stuff is stuff that we just couldn't do. When I was first time around, for me, I was sending like envelopes with 10 by 8 printed
mhm,
CVs to people, right? Resumes to people. So it's the opportunity for connecting with people in the industry now is a day and night compared to what it used to be.
yeah, yeah, I remember lugging VHS tapes around Cannes in a massive satchel. None of that anymore. Um,
No,
so talking about that networking side, um, obviously that's quite an important plays quite an important part. What's your
yeah.
advice for that? And I want to know not just because there's an element of having confidence, smiling, blah blah. Is there anything you really shouldn't do in those situations as well as what you should do when you're networking?
The golden rule with networking is not to go into a new relationship when you're meeting someone for the first time expecting anything, right? You won't meet somebody for the first time and have well, I'll tell you, there's a side note to this. You won't meet somebody for the first time and have them offer you a role in their movie, right? It just doesn't happen that way. And if it does happen, and this has happened to me, it means that that project probably isn't real,
Mm,
right? Because if you think about it, if you're not an established actor, and think about it from the filmmaker perspective, if you're not an established actor, if you meet somebody in a networking event and you offer them something on the spot, right? How much due diligence is that producer or that creative doing in inviting you to come and be in their project, right? Would you do that as a filmmaker if you were serious? And I think the answer is no,
mm,
right? I don't think you would. And so I'm always very wary when someone says, "Oh, you'd be perfect for the same." I'm like, "That's lovely," but the fact that you're saying that suggests to me that it may not happen because
mm,
you're not in the nitty gritty of it. You're in the kind of, oh, it's a great idea phase, and it may turn into something, but don't take it at face value. I've had many business cards from people at Cannes who've been like, "You'd be perfect for this movie I'm making," and you never hear from them again, or the thing just doesn't happen, whatever. So with networking, try and find out how you can help the person that you just met. What can you do for them? Because giving is so much more important than receiving. The more that you give, the more you receive, right? The more you can be of service to others, more things will come to you because you'll be viewed as an enabler, a helper, someone who's got brings things to the table, not just somebody who wants you to give them a gig or give them a job or whatever it is. So try and find ways of helping people. How can I be of assistance? How can I help you achieve your goals? How can I do this thing? How can I help you work on this thing that you're working on? And you don't even have to say like, I'd love to be in it as an actor because that's obvious.
mm.
Of course, you'd love to. Any actor is interested in any job, right? So you don't have to say that. It's like, okay, what can we do to help? How can I help you there? Do you want me to read your script and give you some notes on the script, or do you want to do this? What can it be? Don't go out with like, oh hi, I'm Mark, I'm an actor. Would you put me in your movie? Just that's not how it goes.
Doesn't go like that. Talking to Cannes, actually, I was going to ask you about Cannes. So obviously it's coming up in May.
Yep.
You've been. Um, what is it worth going as an actor? And then did you when you first went? Oh, you had a film with you, didn't you, when you went? So you weren't going
Yeah.
just as an actor. So as an actor, is it worth going?
Um, so I went the first time I went as an actor, and I had basically this idea for a film, called Town versus Gown, which is a boxing movie that I was kind of pitching around and trying to get people interested in. And it's always and I had a thing in the short film corner. And so I was a filmmaker and an actor, and it's really helpful to have a thing somewhere in Can. If you've got a thing in the short film corner, it just gives you that opening. You're like, oh yeah, I've got a film in the short film corner. Oh, fantastic. Most people don't know what that is. Most people don't realize that you just kind of submit and they'll accept most things. But at least you've got something. I always go with some kind of film project that I'm there to kind of talk about. I am there to network as an actor. If I'm really honest, I still don't really know how Can kind of works. I kind of go around to the various events and listen to the talks and go onto the WhatsApp groups and try and get into the receptions and the parties and things. But I'm very aware that there's a whole other side of Can that I just have no visibility or access to, and that's like where people are having, the kind of Vogue parties and all the rest of that kind of cool stuff. And I'm not in there. But I think that as I've been, many, it's probably about 4 or 5 times now, something like that. You kind of you become familiar with it. You become familiar with what's worth doing, what's not worth doing. It's fun to chase around all the in the international village to chase around all the receptions and get all the free drinks, but it doesn't really get you anything. But I think as long as you have got a bunch of business cards printed and you're happy to go to network and be fun and talk and just talk to anybody, then it can be really valuable. And I think that one thing for me is that when you meet people in Cannes, you're a level up when it comes to networking than if you were to go to a networking event in London, right? Anyone can take the tube to a networking event in London. People have made it to Cannes, have got the accreditation, they've put the flights, they've found the accommodation, like they are really serious about it,
Mm.
right? Whether they're actors, producers, writers, whatever it is, they've made the effort and they are that level higher. And so I take people more seriously just because they're there. So
Yeah.
when I meet people in Cannes, I'm like, yeah, you've made it here, right? That is on its own is something.
Yeah. And it's sunny usually, and it's
It's
kind
nice.
of
Yeah.
relaxing, and yeah, and not to mention the other side, which is getting to see some awesome movies. That's not a
Yeah.
bad,
Yeah.
not a bad thing. So you say you've now started teaching. What's one of the what's like the most important thing you teach people when you
Mindset.
teach?
Mindset.
Mindset.
So I don't really teach acting craft. I assume people come to me and they have, they have studied or they have their. I teach like acting career stuff, and for me, it's all starts with the mindset, right? It all starts with this idea that you have to believe that you deserve a position in the film industry. Like you don't want to be one of those people who goes around with this whole starving artist idea, and it's like, oh, it's this romantic idea of someone who's always struggling. You want to be an actor who is booking stuff, and you have to build the confidence in yourself because no one else is going to do it for you, right? That's the truth of the matter. It's a massively oversubscribed profession. There's too many actors for the roles that are out there, and yet you can go into it with a kind of abundance mindset of like, oh, there's enough work for everybody. And I think that the mindset that you take into it is absolutely critical. You have to be fulfilled in the things that you're doing. And even though we love it when we get booked, we love it when we get to go to a screening or a red carpet thing or an award, whatever, you have to be able to do the things you do, which is like your acting craft, your classes, your um, accent work, whether it's reaching out to people on social media and feel fulfillment from the doing of those things and not only rely on the outcomes. You really have to be very focused on like the output, the things you put into it and get fulfillment from those things. And then you can enjoy the things when they come, but you can also you're resilient against when they don't come, which is, the acting profession is full of rejection. It's a very hard place to try and build a career. And so you can't rely on external validation for your happiness,
Mm,
basically.
mm,
If you can get beyond that, then I think you can do well. And yeah, the mindset it builds confidence and allows you to enter rooms and enter environments with the confidence in what you deliver, the value that you bring, which means that you are someone who's kind of magnetic to the people around you. So yeah, mindset is the very first and most important thing for me.
cool, cool, cool. So moving on to your own projects that you're working on.
Yeah.
So the very first ones you did, were they I want to make a film, or were they I want to act in a film, so I'll make a film?
The very first things that I did were um like home movies really, and they were just kind of because we'd loved movies and we'd watched movies and then we'd go and kind of remake them, and then that kind of paid dividends because later on when I'd left acting, Empire started doing the Done in 60 Seconds competition back in like 2008, I think it started, and I was like, and this is before like Be Kind Rewind had come out, stuff like that, and it was like this idea of making a movie, of remaking a movie was like, well, this is what I had grown up doing in my kind of
Mm.
early teens, and so this competition came around and and I did a few of them and then won it one year. So that was a great thing for me because it was like I got to act in all of them. I always cast myself in the lead role. So I played Keanu Reeves in Speed, and I played Josh Hartnett in Pearl Harbor, and I played Maverick in Top Gun, and all the rest of it. Played Ben Affleck in Argo, played Leonardo DiCaprio in Revenant, and I got to play all these roles and have a great time playing them and making these little films and finding ways to make them funny. And it was an incredible discipline to tell a story in 60 seconds. You're not allowed a frame longer. And it used to tick a box for me every year. I'd do one of these, and it would tick my kind of creativity box when I wasn't acting and wasn't like really filmmaking. Um, and then I started moving into making kind of what I thought, more serious kind of like proper short films. And I did a few of those, and then started working on the ideas as for feature films. And Town versus Gown was the first feature that I kind of wrote on spec that I was trying to get out there. the features were generally are written as projects for me to act in.
Hmm.
And that remains true. I write things that I want to play as an actor because, I'm not getting the roles that I want from other people. So write it yourself. And I think that's a really good bit of advice for all actors out there. Create the projects that you want to be in rather than waiting for someone to do them.
Yeah.
And that is so I've never written a screenplay purely on spec of like this could be anybody, or it's always based on like what do I want to play as a character.
Mm.
And that might be an interesting exercise to do someday, to write a story that's just free of my actor ego and just as a screenwriter for me to write or direct or whatever. But that is how I kind of generate projects, because I think of cool things that I'd like to do, or characters I'd like to play, or scenarios, or little action sequences, or little moments, and then they start to kind of, they start to germinate into a thing, and it gradually turns into a story, and the story then becomes like a structure, and then the structure gets laid out on a bunch of, well, like this, and then it gets turned into a screenplay, right? So
Yeah, awesome. So you've worked on commercials, bigger budget projects. Do you ever get starstruck? Is there anyone you've met who's kind of left you speechless?
no, the thing that people forget is when you're on a really big movie, everyone is just there to do their job. So if I briefly met Tom Cruise on Edge of Tomorrow when I was actually just being do some background work. Actually, I was being a helicopter pilot, and you briefly had an interaction, and I've met Angelina Jolie when we did Tomb Raider, and everyone is just there to do their job. And on a film set, when it's slightly different when you're on a location, because the location you're kind of exposed because the public can see you and people. But when you're on a set and it's closed and it's like this is just the crew here, everyone's just there to do their job, and in my experience, you tend not to get sort of divish behavior, whatever, and everyone's just very normal and nice
Mm.
and lovely, and like they're just there to do the best job that they can do. And so I don't get starstruck, and I find that it's just nice to find that these people are just real people
Mm.
when you actually get to meet them. I do some fanboying. I am like very happily to go, and I did one episode of Ghosts, and we love Ghosts, and I was like going around meeting the ghosts and getting selfies with them all and stuff, just because it was super fun, and they're all so lovely. You kind of have to read the floor before you start pulling out the cell phone and asking for a selfie with somebody. But like, if they're all happy and seem up for it, then go for it.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you want more advice from industry professionals who are out there at the moment working, or you just want to listen to some cool stories from film sets from around the world, then please do subscribe.